Here is something that should genuinely unsettle you. In 1908, a Russian scientist named Elie Mechnikov won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. His central argument was this: most of what we call aging, the fatigue, the weakened immunity, the digestive decline, the inflammation that settles into joints and organs and never quite leaves, most of it begins in the gut. And the key to slowing it down, he said, was something traditional cultures had been doing for thousands of years without any scientific framework to explain why it worked. They were fermenting their drinks. Mechnikov had studied the mountain communities of the Caucasus, populations that routinely lived past 100 in better physical condition than most Americans at 70. He found they shared one consistent habit above all others. Every day, they drank something fermented, not alcohol, living drinks, teeming with beneficial bacteria that replenished what modern life was destroying. The medical establishment of 1908 largely ignored him. There were more profitable things to sell. And somewhere between that moment and today, 12 fermented drinks that traditional cultures around the world had used to rebuild digestion, reduce inflammation, and restore strength after illness, quietly disappeared from American kitchens and got replaced with processed beverages that do the opposite of everything those drinks were doing. Today we bring them back. Let's start. Number 1. Kefir. The mountain communities of the Caucasus region guarded their kefir grains so jealously for centuries that sharing them with outsiders was considered a serious offense against the community. Not an exaggeration. There are documented accounts of communities refusing to trade kefir grains even when offered significant payment. They understood, through generations of observation, that what they had was worth protecting. Kefir is made by adding live kefir grains, small cauliflower-shaped clusters of beneficial bacteria and yeast, to fresh milk, and leaving it to ferment for 24 hours. What results is a tangy, drinkable liquid that researchers have found contains up to 61 distinct strains of beneficial bacteria. Most probiotic supplements sold in health stores contain between 2 and 10 strains. 1 cup of traditionally made kefir contains up to 61. A Stanford University study published in 2021 found that people who consumed fermented foods like kefir daily showed measurable reductions in 19 different markers of inflammation in the blood within 10 weeks. For anyone over 60 dealing with joint discomfort, digestive irregularity, or the general sense that recovery from anything takes longer than it used to, those numbers are worth sitting with. The communities who protected those grains with such ferocity were not being superstitious. They were protecting their medicine. The research simply gave us the vocabulary to understand why. How to make it. Kefir grains are available online and increasingly in health food stores. Add 1 to 2 tablespoons of grains to 2 cups of whole milk in a glass jar. Cover with a cloth and leave at room temperature for 24 hours. Strain out the grains, refrigerate the kefir, and start the next batch immediately with the same grains. One initial purchase produces an unlimited supply. 1 cup daily, plain or in a smoothie. The sweetened commercial versions in grocery stores are a pale shadow of the real thing. The live culture count is significantly lower, and the sugar content works against what you are trying to achieve. Number 2. Beet kvass. Eastern European grandmothers kept a jar of this on the counter year-round. Not as a health project, as ordinary kitchen practice that had been passed down so many generations that nobody in the family could remember a time before it existed. The recipe has 3 ingredients: raw beets chopped into cubes, salt water poured over them, a counter to leave them on for 3 to 5 days. That is the entire process. What results is a deep ruby-red liquid that those grandmothers reached for whenever digestion was sluggish, energy was low, or the body simply felt heavier than usual. Modern research has confirmed the mechanism behind what they were observing. Beets are among the richest dietary sources of natural nitrates, compounds the body converts into nitric oxide, which relaxes and widens blood vessels, improving blood flow throughout the entire body. Better circulation means more oxygen reaching the brain, the heart, and the muscles. The fermentation process adds beneficial bacteria on top of all of that, transforming what is already a powerful vegetable into a living probiotic drink simultaneously. Researchers studying Eastern European populations who drank beet kvass regularly found consistently lower rates of cardiovascular complaints compared to those who did not, though researchers note that dietary patterns as a whole make isolating single variables complex. The deep red color is not incidental. It comes from compounds called betalains, natural pigments that researchers have studied for their anti-inflammatory properties in laboratory settings. You are looking at the biology when you look at the color. How to make it. Peel and chop 2 medium beets into 1-inch cubes. Place in a clean quart jar. Add 1 teaspoon of sea salt. Fill with filtered water, leaving an inch of space at the top. Cover with a cloth secured with a rubber band. Leave on the counter for 3 to 5 days, pressing the beets down once daily to keep them submerged. When the liquid is deep red and slightly tangy, strain and refrigerate. 1 small glass before meals. The beets can go through a second fermentation round with fresh salt water before discarding. Cost per batch, under $2. Number 3. Switchel. Switchel built America. That is not a metaphor. During the colonial and frontier era, farmers working 12-hour days in summer heat drank Switchel continuously from clay jugs to stay functional. Not water, not anything else. Switchel. The recipe never changed across 200 years of American farming. Apple cider vinegar, raw ginger, molasses or honey, and water. That combination delivered what we now spend billions of dollars annually buying in brightly colored sports drinks. The vinegar supported the body's natural acid balance and nutrient absorption. The ginger reduced inflammation in overworked muscles and joints. The molasses replaced the minerals lost through sweat, particularly magnesium and potassium, which regulate muscle function and prevent the cramping that hard physical labor in summer heat reliably produces. When commercial sports drinks arrived in the 1960s, Switchel disappeared from American kitchens almost overnight. Nothing in those neon bottles matches what 3 simple ingredients were delivering to working American bodies for 2 centuries. The mineral replacement alone, from real molasses rather than synthetic electrolytes, is measurably different in how the body processes and uses it. For anyone over 60 dealing with muscle cramps, low energy and heat, or poor recovery after physical activity, the drink that built this country is worth rediscovering. How to make it. 2 tablespoons of raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses or raw honey, 1 teaspoon of freshly grated ginger, or half a teaspoon of dried ginger powder, mixed into 2 cups of cold water. Stir well, drink immediately or refrigerate. Some people add a pinch of sea salt for additional mineral content. This takes 90 seconds to make. The farmers who drank it through the hardest summers in American agricultural history were not doing anything complicated. They were doing what worked. Number 4. Kombucha. Your great-grandparents brewed kombucha on the kitchen counter without calling it anything. They just called it good health in a jar. It was only when it disappeared from home kitchens and reappeared in health food stores at $4 a bottle that it acquired a brand identity. Kombucha starts as ordinary sweetened tea, a living culture called a SCOBY, a disk of beneficial bacteria and yeast working together, is placed into the tea and left to ferment for 1 to 4 weeks. During that process, the culture consumes the sugar and produces organic acids, B vitamins, and natural enzymes that support liver function and digestive health. The liver connection is one that most people overlook entirely when they think about gut health. A liver processing waste efficiently means less fatigue, clearer skin, faster recovery, and better mental clarity, particularly relevant after 60, when liver efficiency naturally declines and the cumulative burden of decades of medication, processed food, and environmental exposure has had time to accumulate. Research on kombucha has found promising results in laboratory and animal studies, with human clinical research ongoing. Traditional communities across Russia, China, and Germany brewed it continuously for generations, observing benefits that researchers are now beginning to characterize at the molecular level. The commercial versions are real kombucha, but the live culture count after pasteurization and shelf stabilization is significantly lower than freshly brewed homemade kombucha. The difference matters. How to make it. Brew 2 liters of black or green tea, add 1 cup of sugar, and stir until dissolved. Cool to room temperature. Pour into a glass jar, add your SCOBY and 1 cup of starter liquid from a previous batch or store-bought raw kombucha. Cover with a cloth. Leave at room temperature for 7 to 14 days, tasting from day 7 onward. When pleasantly tart, bottle and refrigerate. SCOBYs are available online for a few dollars and last indefinitely with proper care. One initial purchase, Unlimited kombucha for life. Number 5. Traditional ginger beer. The ginger ale sitting in grocery store refrigerators today and traditional ginger beer share almost nothing except the name. Commercial ginger ale is carbonated water with ginger flavoring added after the fact. Traditional ginger beer is a live fermented drink produced using a ginger bug, a culture of wild yeast and bacteria cultivated from fresh ginger root, water, and sugar over several days. The fermentation produces natural carbonation alongside active probiotic cultures while preserving the full potency of ginger's healing compounds. Those compounds, gingerols and shogols, have been studied extensively for their effects on nausea, digestive inflammation, joint discomfort, and circulation. The heat and filtration used in commercial manufacturing destroys most of what makes fresh ginger medicinally significant. Traditional communities across the Caribbean, West Africa, and rural America brewed ginger beer continuously as both a daily tonic and a remedy for everything from digestive upset to fever. For anyone over 60 dealing with joint stiffness, sluggish digestion, or nausea, which becomes more common as stomach acid production naturally declines with age, traditional ginger beer addresses the digestive environment and the inflammation simultaneously in a glass that costs pennies to produce at home. How to make it? Start a ginger bug by combining 1 teaspoon of grated fresh ginger with 1 teaspoon of sugar in a small jar of water. Feed daily with the same amounts for 5 to 7 days until actively bubbling. Then mix 4 cups of water with 3 tablespoons of fresh ginger juice, 3 tablespoons of sugar, and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Add a 1/4 cup of active ginger bug liquid. Bottle in flip-top bottles and leave at room temperature for 2 to 3 days until carbonated. Refrigerate. The ginger bug continues producing indefinitely with daily feeding. Number 6. Fermented turmeric drink. Turmeric has a problem that frustrates everyone who takes it seriously. The active compound, curcumin, is notoriously difficult for the body to absorb. Studies suggest that most of what you consume in capsule or powder form passes through without entering the bloodstream in meaningful amounts. This is why researchers consistently note that standard turmeric supplementation produces less consistent results than the laboratory evidence for curcumin would predict. Traditional Sri Lankan and South Indian communities solved this problem over 1,000 years ago without knowing the biochemistry. They fermented fresh turmeric root in clay pots with water and natural cultures, consuming the resulting tangy golden drink daily as a remedy for joint discomfort, digestive inflammation, and low immunity. What fermentation does to turmeric is significant. The process breaks down the root's cellular walls and transforms curcumin into forms researchers suggest the body absorbs considerably more efficiently than raw or powdered turmeric. The beneficial bacteria produced during fermentation simultaneously add gut-healing properties. One drink that addresses inflammation and gut balance together, which is exactly how the communities that developed it understood it, though they described it in different language. For anyone over 60 dealing with joint stiffness or chronic low-grade inflammation, this is one of the most overlooked preparations available. How to make it? Grate or slice 4 ounces of fresh turmeric root and place in a clean glass jar. Add a pinch of black pepper, which researchers have found significantly improves curcumin absorption, and 1 teaspoon of raw honey. Fill with filtered water. Add 2 tablespoons of liquid from an active kombucha or kefir batch as a starter culture. Cover and leave at room temperature for 2 to 3 days until slightly tangy. Strain and refrigerate. Drink 1 small glass daily. The clay pot is traditional, but not necessary. Any glass jar produces the same result. Number 7. Amazake. In Japan, there is a drink so nutritionally complete that traditional healers called it the drip of the gods. The name is Amazake, and it has been made in Japanese kitchens for over 1,000 years, consumed at shrines, at festivals, and at sickbeds across the country, given specifically to people recovering from fever, exhaustion, and illness too severe to eat solid food. Traditional physicians reached for it when they needed something that would nourish a body that was too depleted to digest anything else. Amazake is made by fermenting cooked rice with a natural mold culture called koji, the same culture used to make miso and sake, which breaks down the rice starches into simple natural sugars and releases a dense concentration of B vitamins, natural enzymes, and amino acids. The natural sugars produced during fermentation provide accessible energy without the blood sugar spike that refined sugar causes. The B vitamins, particularly B1, B2, B6, and folic acid, support the nervous system and energy production at the cellular level. B vitamin deficiency is one of the most common and least diagnosed contributors to the fatigue, mental fog, and low mood that many people over 60 experience and attribute simply to age. Amazake is gentle enough for the most sensitive digestion and historically given to recovering patients specifically because it delivers nourishment in a form the body barely has to work to absorb. How to make it. Cook 1 cup of short grain rice until very soft. Cool to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature is critical, as higher heat kills the koji culture. Mix in half a cup of dried koji rice, available from Japanese grocery stores and online. Place in a covered container wrapped in a towel to maintain warmth, or in a slow cooker on the lowest setting. Leave for 6 to 10 hours until sweet and fragrant. Serve warm as is, or blend smooth and thin with additional warm water. No sugar needed. The fermentation produces all the sweetness. Refrigerate for up to 5 days. Number 8. Water kefir. Water kefir removes every excuse for not consuming probiotics daily. No dairy. No complicated equipment. No long fermentation windows. Water kefir grains, small crystal-like clusters of bacteria and yeast, are added to sugar water, fruit juice, or coconut water and left to ferment for just 24 to 48 hours. What results is a lightly fizzy, refreshing drink that delivers beneficial bacterial strains completely different from those in dairy kefir or kombucha. That difference matters more than most people realize. The gut microbiome is not a single ecosystem benefiting from one type of probiotic. It is a complex community of hundreds of species, and different fermented drinks support different populations within that community. Water kefir adds microbial diversity that dairy kefir and kombucha are not providing. For anyone over 60 who has taken antibiotics in recent years, which wipes out large portions of the gut microbiome indiscriminately, water kefir offers one of the gentlest and most practical ways to begin rebuilding what was lost. The grains multiply with every batch, meaning one initial purchase produces an endless supply for the rest of your life at essentially zero ongoing cost. The generations who consumed fermented drinks daily were not doing so because they understood microbial diversity. They were doing so because they observed what happened to the people who stopped. How to make it. Dissolve 3 tablespoons of cane sugar in 4 cups of filtered water. Add 2 tablespoons of water kefir grains. Cover with a cloth and leave at room temperature for 24 to 48 hours. Strain out the grains and refrigerate the finished kefir. For a second fermentation that adds natural carbonation and fruit flavor, add a few tablespoons of fruit juice to the strained kefir, seal tightly, and leave for another 24 hours before refrigerating. The grains go straight into a new batch of sugar water, 1 batch every 2 days, indefinitely. Number 9. Jun tea. Most people in the natural health world have encountered kombucha. Very few have encountered its rarer, more refined counterpart. Jun tea is made in a similar way to kombucha. A living culture ferments a sweetened tea base, but with one critical difference that changes everything about what results. Instead of black tea and refined sugar, Jun uses green tea and raw honey. That substitution is not a minor variation. Green tea contains compounds that protect cells from oxidative damage and support brain health in ways that black tea does not match at equivalent concentrations. Raw honey carries its own natural antimicrobial properties and unique sugars that feed beneficial gut bacteria in ways refined sugar never could, and in fact works against. The specific living culture used to ferment Jun, distinct from the SCOBY used for kombucha, produces bacterial strains found in no other fermented drink. Tibetan monks are said to have developed and protected this culture for centuries, using Jun as both a daily health tonic and a remedy during illness. 1 cup of genuine Jun tea delivers green tea's protective compounds, raw honey's healing properties, and a probiotic profile that researchers studying fermented beverages have found genuinely distinct from anything else in the category. For anyone over 60 looking for cognitive support alongside gut health benefits, this combination addresses both through a single daily drink. How to make it. Jun cultures are available from specialty fermentation suppliers online. Brew 2 liters of high-quality green tea. Allow to cool completely. Dissolve 1 cup of raw honey into the cooled tea. Never add honey to hot liquid, as heat destroys its active compounds. Add the June culture and 1 cup of starter liquid. Cover with a cloth and ferment at room temperature for 7 to 14 days. The flavor should be delicate, slightly floral, and pleasantly tart. Refrigerate when ready. June cultures are more temperature sensitive than kombucha scobies. They prefer cooler room temperatures and reward careful attention. Number 10. Shrub, Colonial drinking vinegar. Before every main meal in colonial American households, families drank a small cup of something that no modern nutritionist recommends and almost no American has heard of today. Not water, not wine. A small cup of fruit-infused drinking vinegar that prepared the digestive system for the meal about to arrive. It was called a shrub, and the fact that it disappeared from American tables at the same time that chronic digestive complaints became one of the most commonly reported health issues in the country is a connection worth making. A shrub is made by combining fresh or dried fruit with raw vinegar and a natural sweetener, allowing them to infuse together for several days until the fruit releases its compounds fully into the vinegar base. The result is a concentrated syrup, diluted into cold water before drinking. The acetic acid in the vinegar base stimulates stomach acid production, and low stomach acid is now recognized as a primary contributor to the bloating, indigestion, and uncomfortable fullness after meals that many older Americans manage with antacids. Antacids reduce stomach acid further, which makes the underlying problem progressively worse over time. A small shrub before meals works in the opposite direction, supporting the body's natural digestive process rather than suppressing it. Colonial families consumed this daily without thinking of it as medicine because to them it simply was food. How to make it? Combine 1 cup of fresh or frozen berries with 1 cup of raw apple cider vinegar in a glass jar. Seal and refrigerate for 5 to 7 days, shaking daily. Strain out the fruit, pressing to extract all liquid. Add half a cup of raw honey or sugar and stir until dissolved. This concentrated shrub syrup keeps refrigerated for months. To drink, add 1 to 2 tablespoons to a glass of cold sparkling or still water. Elderberry, blackberry, and raspberry shrubs were the most common colonial preparations. All 3 are worth making. Start with whichever fruit you have available. Number 11. Rejuvalac. In the 1960s, a woman named Anne Wigmore was told by her doctors that her degenerative condition was irreversible and that she should prepare for a life of decline. She refused. Instead, she returned to the traditional food wisdom she had watched her Lithuanian grandmother practice decades earlier, fermenting sprouted grains into a simple drink and consuming it daily alongside raw living foods. Within months, her condition improved dramatically enough that her physicians described the change as unexpected. She spent the rest of her life teaching others what she had discovered. The drink at the center of her recovery was Rejuvalac. Rejuvalac is made by sprouting whole grains, wheat berries, rye, quinoa, or buckwheat, and soaking those sprouted grains in water for 2 days until natural fermentation begins. The resulting liquid is slightly cloudy, mildly tart, and contains natural enzymes that support digestion, beneficial bacteria that support gut balance, and B vitamins including B12, one of the most commonly deficient nutrients in adults over 60, and one of the most critical for nerve function, energy production, and cognitive clarity. The sprouting process before fermentation activates enzymes inside the grain that break down compounds which normally reduce mineral absorption, meaning Rejuvalac delivers nutrition in a form the body can use more efficiently than unsprouted grain. It costs almost nothing to make at home and requires no special equipment. Anne Wigmore's doctors called her recovery impossible. The drink she built it around was made from sprouted grain and water. That gap between what medicine expected and what she experienced is the most honest summary of why these drinks disappeared and why they deserve to come back. How to make it. Soak half a cup of whole wheat berries or quinoa in water for 8 hours. Drain and rinse. Leave in a sprouting jar or any jar covered with cheesecloth, rinsing twice daily, for 2 days until small sprouts appear. Place sprouted grains in a clean jar and cover with 2 cups of filtered water. Leave at room temperature for 2 days. Strain and refrigerate the liquid. The flavor should be mildly tart and slightly yeasty. Drink half a cup before meals. The sprouted grains can go into a second batch with fresh water before composting. Number 12. Fermented elderberry drink. Appalachian grandmothers fermented elderberries every fall without exception, not as a health project, as winter preparation. The same preparation their mothers had made, and their mothers before them, carried forward, because they had watched it work across enough generations of family illness and hard winters to trust it completely. Elderberries themselves contain compounds that researchers have studied extensively for their effects on immune function, specifically finding that certain elderberry compounds may interfere with the ability of viruses to enter healthy cells in laboratory conditions. These are promising findings that researchers note require further clinical investigation, but the direction of the evidence has been consistent enough to sustain serious scientific interest for decades. What fermentation adds to elderberry is significant. The process breaks down the berry's cellular structure, releasing its active compounds in forms the body may absorb more readily than cooked elderberry preparations. The beneficial bacteria produced during fermentation add gut support that elderberry syrup sold in health stores, which is heat-processed and contains no live cultures, simply cannot provide. For anyone over 60, whose immune function naturally becomes less efficient, and whose gut microbiome has typically lost significant diversity compared to younger years, a fermented elderberry drink addresses both simultaneously. The Appalachian grandmothers keeping a jar in their root cellar through winter were not following a recipe. They were following results they had watched work across generations. Never consume raw elderberries. They contain compounds that cause nausea. Always cook or ferment them first. The fermentation process and prior cooking both make them safe and significantly more beneficial. How to make it? Simmer 2 cups of fresh or dried elderberries in 4 cups of water for 20 minutes. Cool completely. Strain out the berries and reserve the liquid. Add 2 tablespoons of raw honey and 2 tablespoons of active water kefir liquid or whey from kefir as a starter. Pour into a clean glass jar, cover with a cloth, and leave at room temperature for 2 to 3 days until slightly tart and gently fizzy. Refrigerate. Drink 2 to 3 ounces daily through fall and winter. The flavor is rich, slightly tart, and deeply fruited. Nothing in a health store bottle comes close to what this preparation delivers.